Okay, everybody have a seat. And defense, who's your next witness? Come on up, sir. And good morning, sir. Thank you for your patience. If you do me a favor, raise your right hand, face Mr. Clerk for us. All right, you're going to have a seat right up there. Just watch your step. And once you're there, if you would slowly state your name and then slowly spell it for us.
Juan Liman Jr., Liman.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Do you know this young man over here?
Yes, I do.
Who is he to you?
He is my stepson.
How old are you?
Right now, 47.
And do you work?
Yes.
What do you do?
I paint and do waterproofing, painter.
And do you have children?
Yes.
And could you tell us their names?
Vanessa Vasata, Amber Vasata, Christopher Vasata, Juan Liman Jr., the third, and Sophia Liman.
Now you mentioned, and Becky.
And Becky, I'm sorry, baby.
You mentioned Vanessa, Christopher, and Amber.
Yes.
Are they natural children?
No.
Do you consider them your own?
In my world, yes.
So I want to take you back to when you met their mother.
Okay.
And was she known at that time as Debbie Vasata?
Yes.
And how old were you when you met?
17, about to turn 18.
Did there come a time when you and Debbie got in a relationship?
Yes.
Was she living with another man at that time?
Couldn't be certain.
Okay. But there came a time you learned she had children with Christopher Bonilla?
Yes.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about how your relationship with Debbie progressed.
At the beginning, it was nice. Everything was, we had no children, because I obviously knew her before she had children. We separated, got back together, formed a family, moved in together.
So let me just stop you for a minute. So basically you met when you were in high school?
Yes.
All right. And you had a relationship then, but kind of went your own ways?
Yes.
And then when you sort of met up again, at that point, did Debbie have 3 children?
Yes. Well, 2 that I know of. Amber wasn't in the picture yet.
Okay. All right. And did you become a family?
Yes.
All right. Where did you live?
Off of Gulfstream in Liquid Road.
And then Amber was part of the family?
Yes.
All right. And then did you and Debbie have a child?
Yes.
And her name is what?
Rebecca.
So you're how old at this point?
24 when Becky was born.
So you're 24 years old and you are basically the father for 4 children?
Yes.
And how was that?
Exciting. It was a new adventure in my life.
Did you treat them all the same?
Yes.
Like they were all your own blood?
Yes.
So did there come a time when you and Debbie started having problems?
Yes.
What kinds of problems?
Pretty much any pretty basic problems in a relationship.
Arguments?
Yes.
And things of that nature?
Yes.
Were the police ever called to your home because
Yes.
of it? Several times?
No, just once.
Okay. All right. And were you working and
Yes.
you took care of the family?
Yes.
And what kind of work were you doing?
I was a line cook at a retirement community.
And were you primarily responsible for supporting this big family?
It was mutual, but yes.
So, did there come a time when Debbie met a woman named Jennifer Combs?
Yes.
And how did they meet? Do you know?
No.
How did you meet Jennifer?
She was in my house one night, and that was how I met her.
And had she moved into your home?
At that time, no.
And what was your understanding of their relationship, Debbie and Jennifer's?
I had no
Thought they were
friends. Yes.
Did there come a time when she did move into your home?
Yes.
And do you know why that was?
No. All I know is I was told to leave.
Quite shortly after she moved in?
Before she moved in.
So, why'd you leave?
Because I left.
Whose home was it?
It was Debbie's mother's home.
Did you feel like you didn't have any right to?
Yes.
So how did you feel about that, leaving your children?
It hurt me bad.
After that, did you continue to have contact with your kids?
At first, no.
And did you know where they were?
At the time I did, but they had moved. Then no, I did not know.
Did you look for them?
I had nowhere to look. I had no clue.
How were you feeling about that?
Depressed. Yes.
Did you ultimately hire a lawyer to try to track them down?
Yes, I did.
So, at some point, did they resurface in your life?
Yes.
The children?
Yes.
And how did that happen?
The lawyer that I hired a private investigator. She was given court papers to show up because I was trying to get custody of Rebecca.
Did you go through with that?
Yes, I did.
And did you get custody?
Yes, I did.
Of Rebecca?
Yes, I did.
And did you get custody of anyone else at that time?
Yes, I did.
Who?
Christopher.
And was that by agreement with Debbie?
Yes, it was.
Did you have any legal claim to him?
No, I did not.
When that happened, so you had gone how long with no contact with the kids?
Roughly, maybe about 2.5 years, 2 years.
You didn't see them, couldn't talk with them, anything?
Correct.
Before that happened, before you had to leave the home, how old was Christopher?
Maybe 4.
I'm going to show you what is marked as defensive aid and introduced without objection.
Okay.
Is that about how old Christopher was?
Yes.
Last saw him?
Yes.
And have you been involved in his life and sports and things like that?
Yes.
And all that?
Yes.
When you went to get custody of Rebecca, were you, did Debbie ask if you would take Christopher?
No.
Was it your understanding she kind of needed you to take Christopher at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And how about your other daughters, Amber and Vanessa? Where were they?
They went to go with Grandma Mary.
So the children were divided at that point, separated?
Yes.
And how about you? Had you remarried?
Yes.
And who is your wife?
Ashley Lennon.
And is she still your wife?
Yes.
So Christopher and Becky come to live with you?
Yes.
And now Christopher is about how old?
Roughly 7, 8.
get him in school?
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about what your relationship was like with Christopher?
My relationship with Christopher was wonderful. I've really had no arguments, no disciplinary, because, you know, if I asked him to do something, he would pretty much do it.
Did you get involved in any activities together?
Yes.
Like what?
Baseball, motocross, because I had a friend that was in the motocross, so Chris was like the right age to ride dirt bikes, and it was something that he really grew accustomed to.
Now, during this time, were you and your wife, did you have any children together?
No.
So doing dirt biking, and I'm going to show you what I've marked as defense 9, which was admitted without objection.
All right, admitted.
And Christopher?
Yes. Yes.
Now, when you first wanted to get into motocross, did Christopher want to, or was he kind of scared?
No, he was excited about it. Yes. 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 He had a little nervousness about jumping doubles and triples. Those are 2 ramps. And one day I just told him, I was like, you got to go for it. You got to do it. And he jumped a double, and I believe that was the best moment of his life riding, because he did it. And then he tried to do it again and gave it a little bit too much gas, and then went over the handlebars and broke his femur.
He recovered from that.
Yes.
And so about how many years did he and Becky live with you?
Roughly maybe 7, 8 years.
Is it that long?
Yes.
How old was he when he left you again?
12, 13 maybe.
Okay.
Just entering middle school.
Okay. And he was in what school when he lived with you?
He was at Heritage Elementary.
And I'm going to show you what we're introducing as Defense Exhibit 10.
Yes.
Is that kind of how, spend a lot of time together?
Yes.
At this point, you were on your time?
Yes.
How about the other boys, Amber and Vanessa? Did you see them?
Yes.
Where were they?
At Grandma Mary's house.
And how would you see them?
On the weekends, we'd go over there for lunch or dinner. And I'd bring the other kids.
Because you wanted them to stay a family.
Correct.
So during this time that Christopher was living with you, did his mother have much contact with him?
No.
Did his mother have any contact with him?
Yes.
And what was? How often?
She'd pop by just to see how they were doing, and
But like how often? Over the course of a year?
2, 3 times within the period that they lived with me.
2 to 3 times total? With
Yes.
this period,
Yes.
6 or 7 years?
Yes.
Was she busy with sort of her life?
Yes.
And did there come a time when Debbie wanted the children back?
Yes.
And where was she living then?
Jupiter.
And who was she living with?
I believe Danielle. I'm not sure.
Did you fight to keep your kids?
No.
And why not?
Because I felt they needed to be together. I didn't want to separate them once they went back with their mother.
Did you feel like you only had a legal claim to Becky?
Yes.
You kind of wanted Becky?
I had to, I let her go because I wanted her to be a part of brother and sister's lives.
So now Christopher is in maybe
Yes.
Start a new school in that area?
Yes.
And how about you? What was your involvement with Christopher after he went back to live with you?
Didn't really have too much involvement.
Did you try to see him like at sporting events or
Yes.
something like that? Like what?
Football. He was playing for the Jupiter Mustangs.
So you would go to his games
Yes.
just to be able to see him?
Yes.
So, Mr. Lignon, I want to ask you some difficult questions. Did there come a time when you became involved in selling drugs?
Yes.
Can you tell us why?
I worked prior to the kids coming to live with me. Overwhelmed, couldn't really provide for them, so I had felt I had to do by all means necessary.
Did there come a time later in Chris's life you became a little involved in your business as well?
Yes.
Do you have some regrets about that?
Yes.
Tell us.
I have the worst regret in the world. I thought I could have done better.
During the time that you were with all the kids, how would you describe Christopher's relationship with his sisters?
Like any other relationship with sisters, they had their moments, but it was all love.
Did Christopher seem to try to look out for them, be the brother of the family?
Not as much as Vanessa.
Uh-huh. Vanessa was the oldest?
Yes.
And she was pretty protective of
Oh,
the others?
yes.
Did there come a time when you did have other children?
Yes.
And who are they?
Juan the third and Sophia.
And how old is Juan the third?
He's 15. He just turned 15.
And how about Sophia?
She's 12. She just turned 12.
After Christopher could drive and come down and see you and things like that, how did his relationship with your kids develop?
Perfect. They formed a bond.
How about your son? What was his relationship with Christopher?
It was like any other two brothers relationship, but it was tight.
Now, Christopher is, 10 plus years older than Juan?
Yes.
Okay. And how did that affect? Did he take on the big brother role with
Yes.
you?
Yes, he did.
What kinds of things would they do?
He would take him on weekends, during the summer, buy him school clothes, trying to, show him that he loved him.
Now, you've had some difficult times in your home.
Very, yes.
You've had several arrests.
Yes.
And your wife has had some problems over the years.
Yes.
With chemical dependency.
Yes.
And has that added some of the pressure to
Yes.
what you've tried to do in terms of taking care of your family?
Yes.
And today, Mr. Lignon, how do you feel about Christopher?
I love him. He's my world. I feel no shame. I feel no hatred towards him or anything else like that. I love him as he's my son.
And will you continue to love him?
Every day. Yes.
Care for him
Yes.
and encourage him?
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the jury?
I'd like to say to the jury that growing up was very difficult for me. I had a decent childhood, but when the kids were thrown at me, it was a very overwhelming situation. I felt I had to be their protector, their provider, and I did everything possibly I could to try to make him a better man. And if I failed, I'm sorry. But I'm only human, and I tried my best.
I don't have anything else. Thank you, sir.
Dave, do you have any questions? Sir, you may step down, watch your step, and thank you. Defense, who's your next witness? Charles Thomason, please. Good morning, sir. Thanks for your patience. And state your name for the record and spell it.
Charles Thomason, Thomason. Morning.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an investigator with your office, senior investigator.
And that is the public defender's office.
Yes, ma'am.
And as part of your duties as an investigator, do you gather records?
Yes.
Like from, whether it be court records or police records or medical records, or those things you gather
All above. Yes.
on any particular case?
Yes.
Did there come a time when I requested you to gather some records involving Christopher Vasata and his family?
Yes.
And as part of that, did you gather records of various calls to the police about domestic disturbances in the home of Deborah Posada?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 11.
No objection, it's admitted.
Those are various police reports from domestic disturbances involving Debbie Vasata and her partner.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm just going to sort of read them off. Is there one from February of 1994,
Yes.
March 1995,
Yes.
August 1995,
Yes.
and September 1997?
Yes.
Now I'm going to hand you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 12 and admitted into evidence without objection.
Admitted.
Ask you if you are asked to collect various records involving Juan Liman.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that exhibit a gathering of police reports involving Mr. Liman?
Yes, it is.
Do they include reports going back to 1991
Yes.
and up until, I think, 2017? Or no, 2014, sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
And do they involve various drug arrests,
They do?
some being arrests that occurred from selling in a home, from a home, his home?
Yes.
cross? All right, you may step down, sir. Who's your next witness? Jennifer Kearns, please. Good morning, ma'am, and thank you for your patience. Come right out there, follow Deputy Dunkley. When you get there, raise your right hand, face Mr. Clerk for us. All right, you're going to have a seat right up there. Please watch your step. Once you get yourself situated, if you please grab that microphone, get it close to your mouth, speak directly into it, and tell us your full name and slowly spell it for us.
Morning. My name's Jennifer Eisen Kearns. EISEN-KEARNS.
Where do you live?
I live in San Luis Obispo County in Central Coast, California.
And what kind of work do you do?
I do various things. I am a nurse. I am a substance abuse counselor. I work specifically with the most severe homeless population that suffer trauma, persistent mental illness, and addiction.
And do you know this gentleman sitting at the table there?
I do. Hi.
How do you know him?
This is the first time I've seen him in 19 years. I know him because I was honored to be a part of his life. And I was in a relationship with his mother.
So we'll talk, okay, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
So you met his mother, Debbie Vasata, at the time?
Yes, correct.
And when was that? How old were you when you met?
I was about 19.
And how did you meet?
We worked at a facility called Connor's Nursery that housed infants affected by HIV and AIDS.
What did you understand her sort of life circumstance was?
Can you be more specific?
Did you have children? Did
Oh,
have
okay.
children?
Right. Yes, I knew pretty soon off that there were children involved. I knew she lived in Lake Worth. She was a nurse.
Did she live with a man?
Yes.
And what was his name?
Juan.
Did she tell you about the father of her children, Christopher Vania?
Yes, I am aware of him.
And did she tell you anything about their relationship?
Yes. I knew that he was in custody, I think prison, and it was a tumultuous relationship where she endured a lot of her own trauma and abuse. The two oldest children were subject to that visually.
So what did she tell you was her situation with Juan?
That he was the father of Rebecca and that he took on this global role of parenting them all. He was pretty much the housewife. He, was the primary caregiver at the time. She worked 2 jobs, and he was doing the cooking and the cleaning and whatever else was involved. I know that when we met, there was an instant connection. I remember it like yesterday, and I fell in love with her. She was my first relationship. And I had lived down the road from where they were living, and one day she was, out sick, and I rode my bike over and brought her chicken noodle soup, and, I saw the pictures on the walls of the kids, and they were the most amazing little things that you'd ever seen. They weren't there when I had to come over, neither was Juan, and that's just was the start of it.
Did there come a time when you actually moved into the home that Juan and Debbie lived in?
Yes.
And how did that come about?
I was leaving a place that I was renting. They were getting other family coming in, so I had to find a place to live, and she welcomed me to come there. And the plan was to have me come in, and eventually the plan was for Juan to get out. And when I arrived, I received the warmest welcome from Chris. He was like, "You can have my room." And I remember the little bed, and I was like, "I don't even know how I'm going to fit in this," but he's like, "It doesn't matter, just, put your stuff in here, and, we'll go swimming, and we'll play." And then the next morning is when, Debbie had Juan leave.
So, did you stay in that home?
I did.
Was that the home on 16th Court?
Right.
And how long did you stay there with the family?
I think it was over a year until we moved to the next, year and a half, maybe into the next portion of our life. Yeah, I don't.
During that time, was Juan out of the picture?
He tried not to be. He definitely loved these kids, and he would, try to come over or maintain dialogue, and that was really opposed of.
In terms of Debbie did not want him having a relationship with the kids?
Yeah, because at one point, their names were Bonilla at the time, and they were changed to Vasata, and I think that was one part of trying to, I think it's speculation, but I would think that, well, one, I don't think that Debbie wanted the kids to know their biological name because she didn't want them to know who their father was. And then changing it to Posada just, I don't know precisely why it was changed, but.
So, but it also probably helped keep them out of contact with people from the past.
Yeah, but yes, it was, yes.
So, what was your relationship like with the kids? You're 19 years old, you're in this house with 4 children.
Right.
What, under the age of 10?
Right, 9.
9. What was your relationship like with the kids?
Well, I think this is when Toy Story 1 was just out, and it was to Infinity and Beyond. And that was kind of my way in, and it's kind of ironic because Toy Story 4 is coming out right now. And I remember my way of connecting with them was that I am going to love you until infinity and beyond. It still holds true today. And they really clinged on to me pretty quickly. I became the primary parent pretty quickly. Again, she worked 2 jobs, and that was the focus. So, I was doing the cooking, the cleaning, the bathing, the nurturing.
What did Christopher call you after you were living there and his father was gone?
It was Mama Jen for most of the time, and then it turned to Mom.
I want to show you what has been marked and edited without objection as defense exhibit 13.
13 admitted.
Yes. Right, yes.
So there came a time, or did there come a time when you left, the family left the home on 16th Court?
Right. We were pursuing a home in Waxahachie, and in the interim, it was thought that the best thing to do would be to leave 16th Court North. I think for a few reasons, but we moved to John Prince Park Campground and stayed there for I don't know. It was a while, 6 weeks, I think.
And when you say you moved there, you moved into what?
We had multiple tents linked to connect, so we could have space for the girls and Chris and for us.
And that was really your residence for that period of time?
It was me and the kids' residence because, yeah.
So why do you say that?
I say that because when we went there, there was a lot of disattachment to Debbie coming there and being a part of this process.
In terms of she wasn't really there?
She really was not there. She would come intermittently to visit.
When you say intermittently, during the day or every couple of days?
Yeah, it wasn't daily. Yeah.
So now you're 20 years old and have the 4 children in tents.
I think actually I want to go back on the age is, and I think I was more 20 in the beginning and then 21 at this time. Yeah.
Let me ask you this in terms of, so did Debbie's disappearing sort of start when you moved to the park in anticipation of moving to Waxahachie?
No, I think it started when we lived at 16th Fort North.
Did it just continue to get sort of
Yes.
bigger absences?
Right.
And how did the children react to their mother not being around?
Yeah, I mean, they all were showing their own signs of, of struggle. The youngest cried often, was behaviorally challenging. Amber became more withdrawn. Vanessa had other physiological symptoms happening, but not Chris. He was kind of like the man of the tent.
And did he seem to attach to you?
Yes, we were very, very close.
So during this time, Juan is not in the picture, not really allowed to have contact with the kids?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Did you know what Juan did for a living?
I did.
And from Debbie? Or
Yes, because the day that I brought the chicken noodle soup is, I was able to get some supply from her.
so you
I knew that he sold drugs.
did you know
I also had friends that knew him.
that actually purchased?
Yes.
Were the children ever present when that was happening?
I know that it was known that he would often have them in the car when driving around, going to wherever he was going.
So, talking about your time in the park, it can sound sort of depressing, was it?
Nope, it actually wasn't. We made the best of it. I mean, we lived outdoors. We had really good water view. We played sports and, cooked our food on a fire and rode bikes and fished and everything else, played hide and go seek.
Was Christopher in school?
Yes.
And would you take him to school during the day?
Right, so in the interim of changing homes, they initially were going to school in Del Rey at a Montessori school, and then they were relocated to the school out in Waxahachie. The three went there, and Rebecca, the youngest, went to the daycare next door.
So they started going to school in Waxahachie because you knew that's where you were going to be moving?
Right.
And so you would
I would bring
drive them out to school in the morning and pick them up at in the day and come back to your tents.
And I was also in nursing school at the time.
So what happened with the Waxahachie house?
Right. And so I just want to clarify that going to the campground was so that, Debbie was the primary worker, and it was so that, she could save money for the closing costs. And so then that happened, and we moved out there, and the next morning, when we woke up, there was a knock on the door, and she was being served with custody papers for Rebecca.
Okay, and then what happened?
And then, the kids went to school, and Debbie left for work, and then she never came home.
And so you're in charge of the children?
Right. 4 children, home, in nursing school, not working.
When you say she never came home, so then it wasn't even intermittent visits?
Weeks went by. I tried to call, I tried to find her, and children's symptoms were showing more signs of attachment issues.
Asking for their mother?
Yes. Rebecca cried often. But I also think that they were content with me there, that I felt safe and nurtured. Did ask where she was, and I didn't know. I mean, they knew that I was trying to find her. Called the morgue. Mother didn't know where she was. I didn't have Juan's number. And then finally, one day she called and said, where are you? And I said, if you don't come home, I'm going to bring the kids to your mother's house. And she said, if you do that, Jen, you will never see them again.
Now let me go back a minute and ask if you were familiar with her mother.
Yes, very much.
And what had been your experience with Debbie's mother?
Mary Martell definitely did not welcome me into this role. She I could relate her to Mommy Dearest. There was a time where Debbie was at work. This is back on 16th Fort, and Becky just could not calm down, and we tried everything. Like all of us tried to help calm her down, and she was not able. I mean, she was 2. And so Debbie wasn't able to come home to help out, and so I called Mary, and her and her husband came, and she took Rebecca to her room, and the kids and I were on the couch, and we definitely heard what was going on in that room.
What was going on in that room?
I mean, you could just hear Rebecca crying and her yelling, and you could hear the sounds of skin touching skin. And, the other kids were pretty upset, and I felt fairly powerless because she was a very powerful woman. And she came out and she said, "Jen, you need to show me that you know how to handle her." And I said, "I am not going to hit Rebecca." And she tried to force me to do it. So that was the first, one of the more profound experiences with Mary.
And so when you're in Loxahatchee, and now have you gone weeks without Debbie being there?
Yes.
And you're a young person trying to go to school. The idea of taking these children to the grandmother, I'm sure, was not something you relished.
Right, it wasn't my first solution. So when that call ended, I talked with the kids, and I said, I just don't really know what to do right now. And it was a conversation that no adult should have with children on figuring out, what to do. I mean, I didn't have money to feed them. My dad helped. My dad had purchased appliances for us. He tried to really welcome them as much as he could, and so I first took them to my dad's house, and he fed them, and he normally gives good advice, but he recommended that I should take them to the grandmother's house. And when I did, Mary came out to the car, and she really pushed the girls to get away from me as fast as possible, and they were crying like, "Jen, don't leave us here." Just crying, and Chris, just tried to hold on to me, and I said, I'm going to come back. I mean, I was thinking, Debbie will come back, and everything will be fine. It's just temporary. And that was the last time I saw Chris and his one sister, Vanessa, until this week.
Were you allowed to have any other contact with the kids after that?
I couldn't. Debbie was disconnected.
So, sounds like for 2 years you were his mom.
Yes.
What can you tell us about Christopher's sort of character and spirit and soul that you saw?
Right. Well, he's a Virgo. His birthday is September 13th. And he's a typical, warrior soul. He was resilient, funny, very nurturing. He loved animals. You were very smart and brave. You loved your sisters. You would do anything for anybody. He sweated like a boy and smelled like a boy. He never hesitated to help me, do chores. Often he would ask me to come in his room at night, and we'd lie in the bed and we'd talk about stars and dinosaurs and bullying. He was very compassionate and empathetic. We would drive down Dixie because often I would take them to Connor's nursery so they could kiss their mother goodnight. And he would see, you know, the poor population and the more suffering, and he was very empathic.
And it sounds like you loved him very much. And he to you.
I loved him to infinity and beyond. I never stopped looking for these kids. And I know that it's probably too young to remember everything, but I know that you loved me at the time. And years ago, you know, I believe Facebook, you know, we connected one time, and I could tell that he didn't really remember me, but he said, "Were you the one with the black Jeep?" And I said, "Yes," because I used to always let him drive on my lap, but not that long ago.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell us, Drew?
Yes. I do. I just want to be clear that I am not blinded to the reality of the situation. And I am pained for the families, and I send my deepest compassion. And it's a very tragic situation. But I want you to know that Chris's life was a tragedy as well. You know, all those characteristics that I just named of his compassion and his love has not been able to be highlighted and valued because he lived a life that is the definition of trauma. He witnessed things and heard things that no kid should ever have to endure. He was moved from school to school, had to change friends, had different parents, had abusive grandparents. He didn't know his other grandparents. His dad was violent, and you know, his mom, you know, wasn't there. And to me, I think that we have an opportunity to end his cycle of violence, that we shouldn't perpetuate more trauma, and to you know, to go forward with, you know, a death penalty. I think that I think we could end the trauma here.
Thank you.
Any questions, State? All right, you may step down, ma'am. Watch your step. Thank you very much for your patience. And who's the next witness? Good morning. Come right out here to the front. Raise your right hand. Face Mr. Clerk for me. All right, you're going to have a seat right up there. Just watch your step. And if you do me a favor, if you talk directly into that microphone for me, the whole thing moves, and get it where it's comfortable for you. And then once you've done that, if you tell us your full name and slowly spell it for us.
My name is Rebecca Melesio Ferrer, M-E-L-E-C-I-O-F-E-R-R-E-R.
And what do you do for a living?
I am employed with the Public Defender's Office as the mitigation specialist in the Major Crimes Division.
And what is your educational background?
I have a master's degree in social work from Florida Atlantic University.
And as part of your job, do you interview witnesses, family members of our clients?
Yes, I do. I conduct interviews, I research records, I review documents in preparation for death penalty trials.
And do you try to put together the history, life timelines, all of those things?
Try to get a complete story of our lives, of our client's life story. Yes, ma'am.
You know Christopher Vasata,
I do.
and have you done some of that work on this case?
I've been working with Christopher Vasata's case since the spring of 2017.
So as part of your work, did you have an opportunity to speak with Danielle DePasquale?
Yes, several times.
And where does she live?
She lives in Middleburg, Florida.
And had she made plans to be here today?
Yes, ma'am. She was supposed to be here last night.
And what happened?
And she kept trying to get in touch with me during the day. And finally, she asked me two big questions for her, whether the trial was going to be streamed in media and if Debbie Vasata was going to be present. I answered yes to both questions, and then she texted me at around 5 o'clock that she would not be able to make it.
So you've had an opportunity over the last 2 years, though, to speak to her several times.
Yes, our first contact with her was around June 2017, and then until yesterday.
And have you prepared sort of a report on the information that Danielle provided you about Christopher and his background?
Yes, I have a report right here.
Okay. And so I am going to ask you to read to this jury what Danielle has told you as part of your interviews.
All right, so Danielle De Pasquale was Debbie Vasata's partner who brought Chris, Vanessa, Amber, and Rebecca under one roof in Jupiter when Christopher was in the 7th grade. Danielle was 28 years old at the time. Danielle and Debbie broke up when Christopher was in 10th or 11th grade. Danielle goes by Dee. She is a Caucasian woman with a large build and short dark hair. She was working as a fitness trainer when she was in Christopher's life, and she continues to work as a trainer today. Dee has been in touch with Christopher's legal team since June 2017. Dee calls Christopher her buddy and told me, "I really love that kid." Dee was confirmed to testify at the sentencing hearing today, which was a decision she wrestled with for several weeks due to her fear that Debbie will retaliate against her for getting involved in her children's lives. She was planning to drive down here, and she had a hotel room booked in West Palm Beach for last night. Last night, she texted that she was not going to be able to make it. Dee told me that she met Debbie at a party in 2001. For 2 years, she didn't know that Debbie had any children until they were doing their taxes one year, and Debbie kept sending Dee away. Dee then saw Debbie claim independence and the names she had listed. Debbie denied that the children were hers. She told Dee that the children were her brothers and she was just helping them financially. Debbie then said she had 2 kids, but that they were the product of rape. Debbie claimed that they were living with other families, but that she was helping them out financially. Debbie eventually told Dee that she actually had 4 children. Dee met the kids at Juan's house. Debbie told Dee that Juan was a drug dealer. Dee did not approve of a drug dealer raising the children, but she admitted that Juan took care of the kids, good care of the kids. Dee was raised with strong family values. She thought it was wrong that the children were split between Debbie's mother's house and Juan's house. Dee and Debbie were already living together. Dee encouraged Debbie to bring the children together under their roof in Jupiter. Christopher, Vanessa, and Becky moved in with them in 2005. Amber moved in a year later. Dee said that bringing the kids together in a small house in Jupiter was financially very stressful, but they were a family, so they made it work. Dee told me that she noticed all the children seemed to be struggling and in need of some sort of therapy. Christopher pulled his hair out. Vanessa suffered from anxiety and flipped out at loud sounds. Amber also had bad anxiety, obsessive compulsive behaviors, and then got addicted to pills. A couple of the children were also overweight, including Christopher. Dee became a parental figure to the children who were between the ages of 9 and 15. These parents became grandparents figures to them. Debbie and Dee bought a home in Jupiter, which the family fixed up together. As a trainer, Dee was a big believer in physical fitness and exercise. She got the entire family eating healthy foods and working out. They ran a mile together every evening. Christopher became an athlete under Dee's watch. She taught Christopher how to play volleyball, she coached him in running, and even got him to participate in the Palm Beach Marathon in 2007, where Chris came in second in his age group with an average of 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Dee organized block parties where all the kids participated. She went jogging with neighbors and was the face of that family. Dee said that she was so involved in the children's lives that her relationship with Debbie began to deteriorate. Dee considered Christopher her son. When he started sleeping over more and more frequently at Sam Diskin's house, it was Dee who went over to meet the Diskins and make sure it was a safe environment. Dee said that Debbie was not involved with her kids to the extent of learning about their friends' families. So if Dee didn't do it, no one was going to. Dee described Debbie as very smart and said that Debbie can be an amazing partner who is good at anticipating your needs. She was on board with everything you wanted to do. Dee said that she now sees how manipulative Debbie was being with her. A few years later, Dee developed feelings for another person and told Debbie. Debbie kicked Dee out of their house. Debbie threw Dee's furniture and clothes on the lawn and destroyed photographs and documents that can't be replaced. Dee wanted to continue a relationship with Chris, Vanessa, Amber, and Rebecca, whom she regarded as her own. But Debbie would not allow that. Each time Debbie learned that Dee had contact with any of the children, Debbie attacked Dee financially. Debbie knew Dee's personal information, and so she opened credit cards in Dee's name and accumulated thousands of dollars of debt. Dee continued to pay Debbie $2,000 a month towards the house they bought together after she moved out. Debbie changed her contact info with the mortgage company and stopped paying the mortgage for about 7 months before Dee realized what was happening. The house was foreclosed upon. Debbie threatened to do worse to Dee if she continued to have contact with the kids. Dee said several times that she would have remained in the kids' lives if she was not scared of Debbie, so Danielle stopped all contact with the kids. Dee told me several times in conversation that she was hesitating coming in to testify for fear of retaliation. She told me she was just beginning to get back on her feet financially since she broke up with Debbie, and she was afraid if she came to testify that Debbie would take some action against her. Dee and I spoke several times while the trial was going on. She told me how much she loved Chris and how guilty she felt thinking that maybe she could have made a difference in Chris's life had she stayed around him.
Thank you. I don't have anything else.
You may step down. Thank you very much. Defense, call your next witness. Good morning, counselor. Come on up. Raise your right hand. Face Mr. Clerk for me. All right, you'll have a seat right up there. Watch your step. Talk directly into the microphone. Tell us your full name and spell it for us, please.
My name is Linda, middle name Dickhaus, Dickhaus. My last name is Agnant, Agnant.
You may proceed.
Ms. Agnant, we just heard some testimony about Christopher and his siblings moving to Jupiter when he was in middle school. how do you know Christopher Vasata?
Chris is my son Jordan's best friend.
And when did they become friends?
Jordan met Chris at Jupiter High School. Jordan and Chris have the same birthday, September 13th. Jordan is 1 year younger than Chris. And when Jordan was a freshman in high school, Jordan's always played sports, and he played freshman football and won a volleyball team, and was at a very short time the band of brothers that I used to say, never to their face, but I called them the Three Stooges. Chris and Sam and Jordan were inseparable in high school. That's how I know Chris.
And by Sam, do you mean Sam Deeskin?
Sorry, Sam Deeskin, yes.
Oh.
Sam and Chris were a year before Jordan, so they were friends. It was my understanding that they had been friends, I thought, since middle school. I'm not sure, but they had definitely been friends for a while. And then Jordan joined that friendship when he met them his freshman year.
Let me ask you a little bit about yourself, ma'am. How old are you?
I was born in 1992, so 57, to do the math.
And where do you currently live?
Right now, I live at 740 North Marshall Street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I lived in Jupiter, Florida until this past August when my youngest graduated from high school. I retired from a 30-plus year practice of law and sold the house in August, and I live in North Carolina now.
And so you're an attorney?
I'm an attorney, yes.
And what kind of law did you specialize in?
It's called construction law.
And did you travel down from North Carolina to be with us here today?
Yeah, actually, this week, as luck would have it, is the week that we spent with my husband's family on the beach. And so I was at a barrier island off the coast of North Carolina, and took a ferry over and flew down here because there was no way I was going to miss this. It's very important that to me that I be here for my Chris.
Your son Jordan couldn't be with us today.
He's in Alaska. He lives in Alaska. He graduated this past summer. He graduated from the University of Central Florida in August and drove to Alaska. And he's a social worker in Alaska and a brand new job out there, for which I also give Chris a lot of credit for getting Jordan back in school. Jordan had dropped out of school for a while. And, can I talk about that?
Let me maybe get there
Okay.
chronologically, if that's okay. So I just want to step back a little bit about the beginnings of your son's friendship with Christopher. So it sounds like he was one grade below Christopher and Sam.
Yes.
And they kind of met each other through sports at Jupiter High School.
That was my understanding. I think they were all on the same volleyball team.
Did Jordan bring Christopher over to your house to introduce you to him?
Yes.
And parents sometimes don't like the friends that their children choose. How did you feel about Christopher?
I really liked Chris. Teenagers can be challenging. I don't know if anybody here is a parent, but some might say Jordan was maybe a difficult kid, and I would tell you that at least as many would say I was a difficult mom. I was a single mom for most of my children's years, and those years were really tough for Jordan and I when he was a teenager in middle school and starting high school. And Jordan didn't share a lot with me. But when he was around Chris, he was totally different, you know. He was just different around me with Chris. Chris took that edge off of Jordan, and Jordan didn't talk to me the way he talked to me in that tone of voice that he used with me when it was just the two of us. He was much better with me, and you know, the boys were beach babies. You know, they were water babies. Sam and Chris and Jordan often went to the beach and did things outdoor. Sam seemed like they were always tinkering with one of Sam's boats, trying to get it running and do different things. So oftentimes Jordan would be upstairs showering, and I would have just Chris sitting there at the counter in the kitchen, and he would talk to me. You know, the conversations I would have loved to have had with Jordan, I could have with Sam and really with Chris. You know, he bridged that gap that I had with my son at that time, and it was just, I was so grateful for that. You know, Chris was always honest with me. You know, some kids don't look you in the eye when they talk. Chris always looked me in the eye. He didn't BS me. He was fun, and he was always very courteous and very respectful, and he could eat. You know, I knew if I just kept putting food in front of he, and when Sam was with him, he and Sam, I just kept putting food in front of them, and as long as and they just kept eating and chatting, and that's how I knew. That's how I knew Chris mostly, is sitting at my kitchen table there.
But it sounds like, you know, you had a bit of a strained relationship with your son Jordan, but Christopher kind of eased that with his presence.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
It also sounds like, you know, the mother you wanted to be to Jordan, which was a little bit strained at that time, was something that you could kind of have as a result of Chris.
You know, it's funny, there's an expression that's been coming through my head all morning, that water finds its own level. And I think that's how I felt with Chris. Chris and I always felt such a closeness to Chris that, you know, I was so wanted to mother my son, who wanted nothing to do with having a mother at that time. And Chris let me mother him. And I always thought, too, that it was kind of a neat connection, because my son Jordan had grown up in a house of girls. You know, he had an older sister, he had a younger sister, he had me, even the dog was a girl, you know, and he didn't have those male friends. And Chris was the brother he never had. And now I hear that, you know, I didn't realize it at the time, but Chris grew up with sisters, and that makes a lot of sense to me now, that neither of them, you know, Jordan didn't have a dad in the house during his informative years. His father and I divorced when he was very little, and I remarried for a brief period of time.
It sounds like Chris kind of helped Jordan be a kid.
Yes.
This says 14, we've admitted without objection.
Okay, admitted.
I did not take that picture. Yes. That's Jordan's in the front.
They seem like they're kind of just goofy. Little.
Yeah.
So you said that Chris, Jordan, and Sam Deeskin were kind of like the Three Stooges. Each of the Stooges play a role in their relationship. What kind of role do you think Chris played in that relationship with Sam and your son?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Jordan had the car, and Sam had grown up in Jupiter. We moved to Jupiter when Jordan was in grade school, and I think that Sam knew all the great spots, the beaches and where to go fishing and the boat and everything, and Jordan and Chris they loved the beach and the sunshine and hanging out with that. It wasn't a low curly bow kind of thing, or whatever their names are, that I can remember.
Was Chris like the leader of the trio, or were they just kind of all three just really good friends?
Yeah, when you said that, I would not say that any one of the three stood out as the leader. I didn't know. They had very different personalities, but they were very, you could tell they genuinely liked each other.
It sounds like from what you said, Sam Deeskin owned a boat or
His
something.
family always had boats, it seemed, yeah.
And is that, at the Deeskins' house, is that where Three Stooges would spend a lot of their time.
Yeah, as a trial lawyer, during that time, my practice kept me out of, I was always in Sanford or down in Miami, so it was I wasn't gone overnight, but I would leave the house at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be home at 10 o'clock at night. And our house sits on Jones Creek, so you could access it by the boat, and we were within walking distance of the high school. So my house was probably the house that the kids hung out with after school because it was conveniently empty. But then on the weekends, they spent a lot of time at the Deaskins, and Jordan would spend nights at the Deaskins too on the weekends. And by the time Chris was a senior, I learned he was basically living at the Deaskins during that period of time.
Did you ever meet his mom or stepfather?
Never met any of his family, no.
As far as you know, he was a kid taken in by the Deaskins.
That's what's my understanding, is that there was reasons at home that he couldn't or didn't want to live there, and Jordan never loyalty. They were fiercely loyal and protective of each other, and for whatever reason, Jordan did not feel it was his place to share whatever confidences Chris might have shared with him about why he was living at the Deaskins. And the Deaskins were good people. I mean, I know Sam and his parents were always at the volleyball games, so.
And I think they played volleyball together as well as some other sports, but spent an extraordinary amount of time together. Tell us about the trip you took Chris on to Colorado.
It was his senior year. Jordan was a junior. It was a ski trip. Jordan was a water baby, and he was also a snow baby. He loved the snow, and I started taking Jordan snow skiing and snowboarding when he was probably in middle school. And the year before, I had let Jordan take a friend on a ski trip, and it was a snowboarding trip. For Jordan, it was snow skiing. For me, it was skiing. I couldn't keep up with Jordan anymore, and it wasn't so much fun. So the next year, it was Chris's senior year, and so the decision was made by the family that Chris should come with us on that ski trip. And so we all went to Beaver Creek together. And that's why when you were showing that picture, I was like, I have a great picture that's, it was on the wall in my den, and it's in a box somewhere. I haven't finished unpacking since the move, but it's the 5 of us at Beaver Creek out in Colorado. Me, my husband, Chris, Jordan, and the little one, Sarah. My oldest one was not into snow at that point in time.
So we couldn't find the good picture, but there's this other
Oh, yeah. That's that looks like it's Beaver Creek. That's out in front of, that's actually in Avon, which is, we stayed at Christie's Lodge in Avon right across. I suspect I would have. I believe that I did. Airfare, you know, skiing's a very expensive trip, and we stayed in a pretty economical place, and then every day I know I would give Jordan and Chris we'd all eat breakfast together, we'd all eat dinner together, and everybody would get their $20 or whatever so that they could get lunch out on the thing. But I believe I would have paid for all, if not, or most, if not all of that trip for Chris.
It sounds like snowboarding is something that Christopher and Jordan liked and continue to like.
And it's funny, I'm not sure that wasn't Chris's first snowboarding trip. I don't know if he had snowboarded before that, but what we found was if you surf, then you can snowboard. And Chris was a surfer, and they were all kind of water babies. So, and I know after that, the boys continued to go on those trips. Jordan still goes on a trip every year.
And did you know that they had gone on that Chris had gone on one of those trips just about a week before?
I did, yes I did. There they are. That's my son Jordan on the left, Chris next to them, Tukey, that's a birdie, another really good friend down in the front. I don't recognize the fellow on the far right.
Did you know about Christopher being sick throughout this trip?
Yes.
In 2017?
I don't remember if I found out about it at the time or afterwards, but Jordan had mentioned to me that Chris was violently ill most of that trip. And he didn't give me any details, he just said how sick Chris had been.
I want to move forward in time a few years since they were all in school in Jupiter High. Tell us about the last time you saw Christopher.
The very last time I saw Christopher, I happened to be in West Palm Beach about 2 weeks ago, the last day of jury selection. And I sat in the back and saw Chris's back. I'm not sure that he knew that I was in the courtroom.
So let me clarify. The
Sorry.
last time that you saw him, I believe was a couple of years ago.
It was the Christmas before the events that we're all here on today. That was Super Bowl, the first weekend in February, I believe. I saw him over Christmas. Jordan was home. Jordan was back in school by that time. He was at UCF, and he was home for Christmas. So I got to see folks, and Chris came by, and it was just such an unexpected thing. I hadn't seen Chris in a few years. You know, you see the kids all the time, and then they graduate from high school, and all of a sudden everybody scatters, and then it was just such a nice surprise. I was sitting there, and Chris walks around the corner. He was wearing, he was painting. He was wearing like commercial painting, like, you know, the white shirt and white pants with splatters of paint all over him. And he walked in the door with Jordan, and Jordan went upstairs to take a shower, and I started putting food in front of Chris. I think he ate 3 plates of whatever I had that day, and he was telling me that he had a job painting, and that my husband was there at the time, and you know, we used to talk about school, hoping that Chris would be able to get to school maybe someday, and he said he thought that he might be able to start a business, either landscaping or a pool company. He thought those would be good businesses that he could start, that he could manage on his own. They would be, you know, here where we live in South Florida, you need landscapers and pool people all year round, and he thought that was a realistic goal for him to have, was to start a business like that. And my husband and I talked with him for about, you know, however long Jordan was upstairs getting ready about that.
You said that Christopher may have had an influence in Jordan staying in school. Talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of it's come back since I've been sitting here. 2012, Jordan graduated from high school, and he was actually out at Florida Gulf Coast when Chris had his accident in October of 2012. Because I heard about that, and I was even saying if Chris needs a place to recover, even though Jordan was off at school at the time, he was more than welcome at our house. But anyways, Jordan went to school at Florida Gulf Coast. He did a year, and then he stayed in Fort Myers and worked. He was working at a country club, and then he started his second year and hated it and dropped out. He got halfway through his first semester of his second year and wanted nothing to do with school. This was a waste of time. He couldn't see where this was ever going to help anything. And so he dropped out of school, and that was the darkest period of time in my life for Jordan, because I had saved money for all of my children to go to college, and if he didn't want to go to college, then he was on his own. And so Jordan tried to make it on his own for the next year and a half, and he worked at different jobs. He would work 2 or 3 jobs at a time, and it's very hard to be able to support yourself with a high school degree. And he found that, and things kept getting worse and worse for him, and he finally ended up in Green Acres, Florida, and he was working at a local resort, and I think he was also working at a Duffy's at that period of time. And Chris ended up back in his life somehow. The two of them, I don't know if they had lost touch or whatever. And again, Jordan and I were, it was a dark time for the two of us. But anyway, out of the blue, I got a call from my son Jordan. He says, "Mom, is that offer to go to college still on the table? I think I'm ready now." And I'll never forget that day. I, dropped to my knees, and it was then that I found out that Chris had appeared back in his life. And in my heart, I believe that maybe Chris had something to do with that, because Chris would have been,
Does Jordan still consider Christopher a friend?
Oh, yeah. I called Jordan on Friday after the verdict came in to see how he was doing. And I said, "Honey, how you doing?" He's like, "I'm at work, Mom." I said, I know. How are you doing? I said, "Why are you calling me?" I said, "Chris was your was a really close friend in high school. And he was like, Mom, Chris is my best friend. He said, Chris will always be my best friend. Just because people make mistakes doesn't mean we abandon them.
When you look at your son's life for the last 12 years or so since you met Christopher, what do you think that the impact that Christopher has had on your son is?
He's been a good friend. Jordan's learned, a lot of ways are cut from the same cloth, but the loyalty, friendship, I believe Chris wanted Jordan to be the best Jordan that Jordan could be, and he was one of those friends. You know, you have friends that are kind of fair weather friends that won't tell you what you don't want to hear, and I don't think Chris was that friend. I think Chris was probably in Jordan's face about not to throw his life away, and you've got an opportunity to go to college, for God's sake, don't be stubborn, get over it. So what if you don't like your mom? Don't let that stand in the way of doing what you need to do. And he was a great friend to Jordan's and pushed Jordan, and I like to think that Jordan tried to be the best friend that he could be.
Do you think that Christopher could have a positive impact have a positive impact on others in prison?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this whole thing has been surreal for me. I still cannot get my head around.
But you feel like Chris can still have a meaningful life and touch other people?
Absolutely. The Chris Vasata I know is a kind, respectful, loving, happy, helpful kid, like those. When I saw that circle of those kids, I saw Chris and Lacey. I mean, Lacey was sat there next to Chris at the counter. It was his girlfriend in high school, and I saw those kids. They were happy kids. We lived this beautiful life in Jupiter. I had no idea. I think he has a life that is worthwhile, and I think that he can be. I hope that if given the opportunity, Chris might find his voice and be able to help people in the future the way he's helped my family. And but obviously the opportunity he might have someday to help other people.
That's all.
Any cross? You may step down. Thank you very much. Jurors, your lunch is here. So we're going to take a break. You're not to talk about the case in any way, shape, or form while you're back there. Enjoy your lunch. And I'm going to ask everybody to gather up back here at 12:45. Thank you.